I installed a voice-activated recorder in my own living room, and what I heard my husband say when he thought I was asleep destroyed everything I believed about my marriage. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I got here, how a random Tuesday afternoon turned into the moment that changed my entire life. Where are you watching from? My name is Rachel, and for 8 years I thought I knew my husband. Marcus and I met in our late 20s at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was charming, attentive, made me laugh until my stomach hurt. We dated for 2 years before he proposed on a beach in Maui, the sunset behind him making everything look like a movie scene. We got married, bought a small house in Portland, and settled into what I thought was a happy life. Marcus worked as a sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. I was a graphic designer, mostly freelance, working from home. From the outside, we looked perfect. We hosted dinner parties, went hiking on weekends, posted happy photos on social media. But about 6 months ago, something shifted. Marcus started coming home later, always with reasonable excuses. Client dinners, team meetings, drinks with his boss. He'd walk in around 9 or 10 at night, kiss my forehead, and head straight to the shower. His phone, which used to sit casually on the kitchen counter, became attached to his hand. He'd take it to the bathroom, keep it face down during dinner, angle the screen away when I walked past. When I asked about it, he'd laugh it off. Work stuff, babe. Confidential client information. You know how it is. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was letting my insecurities get the better of me. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and cold. Then came the night that made me cross a line I never thought I'd cross. It was a Thursday in late October. Marcus had texted saying he'd be home late, another client dinner. I'd made pasta, eaten alone, and was watching a show on Netflix when I heard his car pull into the driveway around 11. He came in quietly, probably thinking I was asleep. I heard him moving around downstairs, heard the refrigerator open and close. Then I heard his voice, low and warm, in a way he hadn't spoken to me in months. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. He was on the phone. "I can't wait to see you either," he said, his voice soft and intimate. "Tomorrow at lunch?" "Yeah, the usual place. She won't suspect anything." "I'm careful." My heart stopped. "She won't suspect anything." I stood frozen on the stairs, my hand gripping the railing so hard my knuckles turned white. He laughed at something the person on the other end said. A laugh I recognized, the one he used to give me. "I love you too," he whispered. "See you tomorrow." I heard him end the call, heard his footsteps moving toward the stairs. I scrambled back to the bedroom, dove under the covers, and forced my breathing to slow. When he came in minutes later, I pretended to be asleep. He undressed quietly, slipped into bed beside me, and within minutes was snoring softly. I lay there in the dark, my mind racing, my body rigid with shock and rage. I could confront him right then, wake him up and demand answers. But something stopped me. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. Because if I accused him and he denied it, if he made me feel crazy for suspecting him, I'd never forgive myself. The next morning, I waited until Marcus left for work, his goodbye kiss on my cheek, feeling like a betrayal. Then, I got in my car and drove to an electronics store across town, somewhere I'd never normally go. I walked through the aisles feeling like a criminal, searching for what I needed. I found it in aisle 7, a small voice-activated digital recorder, the kind marketed for students recording lectures or journalists conducting interviews. It was tiny, could fit in my palm, and had a battery life of 48 hours. The sales clerk who rang me up was a young guy with headphones around his neck. He barely looked at me, just scanned the item and bagged it. I paid cash. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the device. This was it. The point of no return. If I did this, if I planted a recorder in my own home to spy on my own husband, I could never undo it. I'd always know I'd been the kind of person who did this. But I thought about his voice last night, warm and loving, directed at someone else. I thought about the months of distance, the phone always in his hand, the late nights. I opened the package. The recorder was simple to operate. Press one button to activate voice detection mode, and it would automatically start recording when it detected sound, then stop when things went quiet to save battery and memory. I walked through the house trying to decide where to hide it. The bedroom felt too invasive, too violating of whatever shred of privacy still existed between us. The kitchen was too risky, too much background noise from appliances. Then I thought about the living room, specifically the bookshelf next to the couch. Marcus spent a lot of time on that couch in the evenings, scrolling through his phone, making calls he said were work-related. I could tuck the recorder behind some books, angle it toward the couch, and it would capture everything. I found a spot behind a row of old paperbacks we'd bought at a yard sale years ago and never read. The recorder fit perfectly, invisible unless you were specifically looking for it. I activated it, tested it by speaking from the couch, then played it back. Crystal clear. I pushed the books back in place and stepped away, feeling sick. That was Monday. For 3 days, I went about my routine as normally as I could. I worked on design projects, ran errands, made dinner. Marcus came home at reasonable hours those nights, Monday and Tuesday, and we ate together, watched television, went to bed. The recorder captured hours of mundane conversation, television audio, the sounds of our ordinary life. I'd check it each day when Marcus was at work, fast-forwarding through the files, finding nothing incriminating. Just us, living our life, and I started to feel foolish, paranoid, guilty for suspecting him. Maybe I'd misheard that phone call. Maybe I'd imagined the intimacy in his voice. Maybe I was manufacturing problems that didn't exist. Then came Wednesday. Marcus texted me around noon saying he had a late meeting, wouldn't be home until 8 or 9. I told him okay, told him I loved him. He sent back a heart emoji. At 7:30 that evening, I was in my home office editing photos for a client when I heard the front door open. My heart jumped. Marcus was home early. I heard him moving around downstairs, heard him on the phone. I crept to my office door and listened, but couldn't make out the words. Then I heard the front door again, heard voices, plural. Marcus was talking to someone. I felt frozen, torn between going downstairs to see who it was and staying hidden. I heard laughter, female laughter, light and familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. I recognized that laugh. It was Stephanie, my friend. Or who I'd thought was my friend. We'd met 2 years ago at a yoga class, had become close, met for coffee regularly, texted constantly. She knew about my marriage, about my insecurities, about everything, and she was downstairs in my house with my husband when he'd told me he had a late meeting. I heard them moving into the living room, heard the couch creak as they sat down. My office was directly above the living room, and our old house had terrible insulation. I could hear them clearly through the floor. "This is risky," Stephanie said, her voice playful. "What if Rachel comes home early?" "She won't," Marcus replied. "She thinks I'm at the office until 9. Besides, she never leaves her office when she's working. We could probably set off fireworks down here and she wouldn't notice." They both laughed. I stood at the top of the stairs, my hand over my mouth, trying not to make a sound, trying not to scream. I heard more talking, too low to make out clearly, then silence. Then sounds I didn't want to identify, sounds that made my skin crawl and my vision blur with tears. I backed away from the stairs, went into the bathroom, and turned on the fan to cover any sound I might make. I sat on the floor and cried silently, my whole body shaking. This was happening in my house, in my living room, while I was home. The audacity of it, the disrespect, the absolute betrayal was more than I could process. After what felt like hours, but was probably 30 minutes, I heard the front door open and close. I heard Marcus's footsteps on the stairs. I dried my face quickly, flushed the toilet for sound, and opened the bathroom door just as he reached the landing. "Hey, babe," he said, smiling, looking completely normal. "Meeting got canceled, so I came home early. Thought we could watch a movie or something." I stared at him. This man I'd loved, this man I'd built a life with, and saw a complete stranger. Sure, I managed to say. That sounds nice. We watched a movie. I don't remember what it was. I sat beside him on the couch where he'd been with her an hour before, and I played the role of unsuspecting wife perfectly. When we went to bed, he reached for me, tried to initiate intimacy. I claimed a headache. The next morning, I waited for Marcus to leave for work, watching from the window as his car disappeared down the street. Then I practically ran to the living room, pulled out the recorder, and took it upstairs to my office. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely press the playback button. But I had to hear it. I had to know exactly what had been said, exactly what had happened. I fast-forwarded to 7:30 the previous evening. There was the sound of the front door opening, Marcus's voice talking on his phone. "Yeah, she's upstairs working. Come on in." Then Stephanie's voice, clearer now through the recorder than it had been through the floor. "I still can't believe we're doing this. It's so wrong, but God, I can't stay away from you." Marcus laughed. "If it's wrong, why does it feel so right?" They talked for a few minutes. Casual conversation about their days, about plans for the weekend. Then Stephanie said something that made my blood run cold. "Does she really not suspect anything?" "Rachel?" Marcus scoffed. "No, she's completely oblivious. She's so wrapped up in her little design projects, she barely notices what's going on around her. Honestly, I think she suspects something might be off, but she'd never actually do anything about it. She doesn't have the spine for confrontation. That's always been her problem, too passive, too afraid to make waves. It's made this whole thing surprisingly easy." Stephanie laughed, a sound that used to make me smile, and now made me want to throw the recorder across the room. Poor Rachel, I almost feel bad. Almost. But not enough to stop. "Marcus, you're terrible." "And you love it," he replied. Their conversation continued, became more intimate, and I forced myself to listen to every word. They talked about how long they'd been seeing each other, 7 months, since before I'd even started noticing the distance. They talked about their future, about Marcus planning to leave me once he figured out the finances, once he made sure he wouldn't lose too much in a divorce. "He's been so good to me, actually letting me use her friendship to cover our tracks," Stephanie said. "Last month when I told her I had a family emergency and needed to cancel our coffee date, I was with you at that hotel in Seattle. The Seattle trip." Marcus had gone to Seattle for a supposed work conference. I'd texted Stephanie that same weekend about getting together when he got back, and she'd said she had a family emergency. They'd been together. They'd coordinated their lies. I listened to another 20 minutes of recording. Then came the sounds I'd heard through the floor. Undeniable now. Documented. Real. When it was over, I sat in silence, the recorder still in my hand. I had everything I needed, proof beyond any doubt, evidence that couldn't be denied or explained away. I copied the audio files to my laptop, backed them up to 3 different cloud services, and saved them to a flash drive I put in my desk drawer. Then I called a lawyer, found one through an online search who specialized in divorce cases involving infidelity. Her name was Patricia Chen, and her reviews praised her as ruthless but fair. I made an appointment for that afternoon. Patricia's office was in downtown Portland, modern and professional. She listened to the recordings, her face impassive, taking notes. When the audio ended, she looked up at me. "This is substantial evidence," she said. "In Oregon, we're a no-fault divorce state, so infidelity doesn't affect the legal process itself, but it can influence spousal support and division of assets, especially given the planning and deception involved. We can use this." I felt numb, disconnected from what was happening, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. What do I do now? First, gather financial documents, bank statements, tax returns, property deeds, investment accounts, anything you can access. If he's planning to leave you, he may already be moving assets. Second, don't let him know you know, not yet. We need time to build the strongest case possible. Can you do that? Can you go home and act normal? I thought about the past 8 years, about all the times I'd swallowed my feelings to keep the peace, All the times I'd made myself smaller to make Marcus comfortable. Yeah, I said, I can do that. I went home and cooked dinner like nothing had happened. When Marcus came home, I smiled, asked about his day, served him pot roast and potatoes. We ate together, and he told me about a difficult client, about office politics, about his plans for the weekend. Want to go hiking on Saturday? He asked. Just the two of us, like we used to? Sure, I said, passing him more potatoes. That sounds perfect. That night, lying in bed next to him, listening to him sleep, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The slow erosion of intimacy, the distance that had grown between us, the lies that had become his default. Tomorrow, I'd start gathering financial documents. Next week, Patricia would file the divorce papers. Eventually, Marcus would know that I knew, that I had evidence, that his carefully constructed lies had been recorded and documented. But tonight, I let him sleep peacefully beside me, unaware that what he couldn't see, what he thought was hidden safely in shadows and secret phone calls and stolen afternoons, had come back in crystal clear audio, every word preserved, every betrayal documented. Sometimes the things we think are invisible leave the deepest marks, and sometimes those marks become evidence.